I'm devastated at my suspension. So after PMQs today, I was called in and I was told it was for continuous breaches of party discipline. I have voted against the government. I think it's a dozen times, and I have been outspoken about some of the missteps, I would say, in media appearances and outlets.
A watchdog says the government's de-radicalisation programme should be open to those who are fascinated with extreme violence. Lord Anderson's been looking at lessons which need to be learned from the murder of the MP, Sir David Amess, and the Southport stabbings. He says Prevent's remit should be widened to those with no fixed ideology. Former Detective Superintendent in the Metropolitan Police, Shabnan Chowdhury, has told LBC extremism may look very different now.
Times have changed. The type of violent extremists that you get now online have changed. You look at some of these young people, and under 50% are under 18. These are generally young people that sit as lone wolves in their rooms, in their homes, on their laptops. They've got access to all types of social media.
Donald Trump's under pressure from his own base over failures to publish a report into the late paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The US president's most ardent supporters claim the files include a client list, something the Justice Department has denied. He and many figures in his administration have spent years saying they would release the so-called files. Speaking in the Oval Office, Mr. Trump says people are being fooled.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net. And so they try and do the Democrats' work. The Democrats are good for nothing other than these hoaxes. They're bad for policy.
A 19-year-old who murdered his mother, brother and sister has avoided being handed a whole life order. Nicholas Prosper was jailed in March for at least 49 years for killing them at their family home in Loughton in 2023. The Solicitor General referred his sentence to the Court of Appeal for being unduly lenient. Sir Keir Starmer says there are serious questions to answer after a major data breach which put thousands of Afghans at risk. The Prime Minister says a leak exposes the Conservatives' failures. And 2 students who were stabbed to death in Nottingham 2 years ago will receive posthumous degrees later this month. 19-year-olds Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Coomer were killed as they walked home from a night out. The University of Nottingham says it's liaising with the teenagers' families. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 11 points at 89.26. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather, light rain across Wales and southwest England tonight. A few showers for Northern Ireland, a low of 9 degrees. Sunny spells for central and southern areas tomorrow with the odd shower at times, a high of 28 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global. Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening and welcome to... Is it Wednesday today? It is Wednesday today. Welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. It's 7 minutes past 8. Sorry we've started a little bit late, but you'll understand we wanted to have a word with Rachel Maskell given what's happened today. On the panel with me, to my left, Jess Brown-Fuller, who's the Liberal Democrat health spokesperson and MP for the beautiful town of Chichester. Will Stone, sitting next to her, is Labour MP for the... Can I describe Swindon North as beautiful? I think I can.
Castle Eaton, Highworth, Blunston. It's a good area.
Tim Loughton is former Conservative MP and Minister and is now seeking the party's nomination for next year's Sussex mayoral election. Beautiful county of Sussex.
The most beautiful
I live just
county.
over the border, so I can't vote for you.
You need to move.
No, not going to happen. And Anita Boateng, the political commentator and former advisor to Conservative cabinet ministers. She is now a partner of the PR agency, the beautiful Portland Communications. They are here to answer your questions. 0345 6060 973. There are spaces on the board if you'd like to fill them, and you can WhatsApp us on that number too and text 84850 and watch us on Global Player or the LBC app.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Let's go to our first caller. It's Tyler in Leeds. Ayop, Tyler.
Hi, Mr. Dale. Hello, Cross Question panel. After another glorious week for Keir Starmer, my question is, was the firing of these 4 MPs badly timed?
Will Stone, I've got to come to you first on this.
I don't think there's ever an ideal time to take the whip away from 4 people, but we have to make adult decisions, and that is what the Whips Department have decided. So it's the correct time. Whether it's ideal or not is a different matter.
I mean, there's another perspective on this with a new left-wing party seemingly about to be launched. Why on earth would you do this just on the advent of that?
We don't dance to the tune of Jeremy Corbyn, so if things have to happen, they have to happen, but it's got nothing to do with that as far as I'm concerned.
And what do you make of the fact that a spokesperson in number 10 was asked for the reasons for the whip being withdrawn and was told that it was because of consistent knobheadery?
Well, I wouldn't use those words myself. I know some of the MPs, obviously, that have been dismissed. They're fine. They do get up to a little bit of mischief, just being realistic. But, yeah, I wouldn't use those words, and I think that's a little bit disrespectful and inappropriate, to be honest.
If you'd been the chief whip, would you have done this?
Probably, yeah.
Even though it's sort of a needless distraction when the Keir Starmer, at Prime Minister's questions, in a way had the Conservatives on the run over the whole Afghan thing, which I'm sure we'll come to later in the programme. Why do this to distract people from far more important events?
I don't think it's a distraction. Coming at it from my point of view, being ex-military, I believe in collective responsibility. These individuals have flouted that on multiple occasions. You have to have a line, and if you continuously cross the line, there has to be actions. That's the point in the whip. I don't want to see anyone lose the whip. We're elected under a Labour banner, but you have to do what you have to do. OK, Jess Brown-Fuller.
It's an issue for the Labour Party, isn't it? And they've clearly made a decision that the 4 Labour MPs cannot maintain the whip, but it's their issue to deal with, and the Liberal Democrats meanwhile are getting on with the job, getting ready to get back to our constituencies.
Only last Thursday I remember saying on the programme that one of your MPs had just been fired for disobeying the whip, Christine Jardine.
Christine is still very much a Liberal Democrat MP.
She is, but she got fired from the shadow cabinet, which is effectively the same thing.
She made a choice, and she chose to take away her spokesperson role.
No, she absolutely did not. Would you like me to read the WhatsApp message I've got from her? Because
from Christine.
I can assure you she did not. Ed Davey fired her.
She is still very much a Liberal Democrat and an important member of the Liberal Democrat Party as well.
But she was fired, wasn't she? You just said she decided to resign.
I think that Christine knew what was going to happen if she chose to go against the party whip. So those conversations, I'm sure, happened before the vote, and so I'm sure that she knew that there would be a letter waiting for her after the vote.
OK, it's just a shame that your press people told journalists before they actually told her, which seems to me to be a bit of a disgraceful way of conducting affairs.
I think the person that's involved should absolutely always be the first person to be told anything. And I would hope that the processes were followed. But as I wasn't involved, I wasn't privy to those conversations.
Okay. Tim Loughton.
Well, funny enough, I've just bumped into Christine Jardine in a reception in the House of Commons, and clearly she didn't think she'd voluntarily gone anywhere. But anyway, that's a matter for the Liberal Democrats. I just think it's extraordinary with a Labour government with a supermajority of, about 172 now.
It's now down to 140, ChatGPT tells me.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Well, then we must believe ChatGPT.
Exactly.
Anyway, it's still quite sizable. And that they've already had to start shelving legislation because they can't guarantee getting it through the Commons. I mean, we had some problems in the last 14 years, but by and large, we got most stuff through the Commons with much smaller majorities. And there comes a time when backbenchers are not going to take notice of the chief whip or number 10 being threatening. They suspended, I think, half a dozen MPs last year after they voted against them. Although, frankly, some of them are pretty detached from the Labour Party anyway. That was sent as a warning sign. That didn't stop scores of them voting against the government recently and threatening to completely derail some of the welfare reforms. And now they're doing it again. That is no way to run a government, and for so many Labour backbenchers to be going off doing their own thing so early into a Labour government is extraordinary.
But I seem to remember 3 months into a Boris Johnson government that 21 Conservative MPs lost the whip for disobeying the whip's orders on prorogation?
On a very substantial issue around Brexit, and we can reopen that one again. But
and I suppose the difference is that was on a vote which was turned to confidence vote, whereas this vote, the welfare reform bill, wasn't a confidence vote.
And it wasn't handled very well, and it was really, really clear as to what was expected of Conservative MPs to get the Brexit vote through, because that's what we've been elected on to do. But starting ticking off naughty boys and girls on the Labour backbenches clearly isn't working, because who's going to be the next bunch that are going to lose the whip? I do find 3 of them have been sacked as trade envoys. Nobody knows.
So
what
the trade envoys haven't lost the whip. That's a separate.
They've been sacked as trade envoys instead. Trade envoys, which are this strange position. I was a trade envoy for Mozambique and the Democratic Republic of Congo, which they...
Was that an exacting job?
Well, I never was able to go there because 2 weeks after I was appointed for the DRC, there was an Ebola outbreak, so nobody was allowed to go there anyway.
That's a warning to the citizens of Sussex.
But, I mean, the prospect that you're going to lose your job as a trade envoy, they've lost control. Whips need to have far better control and loyalty from their backbenchers, and so soon into a government, clearly to have lost that is extraordinary. And even back in 1997, when there were 165 of us, I think it was, when I was first elected, the unity amongst our party then was extraordinary. I wish it had stayed that for the subsequent 27 years that I was in Parliament. So this is unprecedented.
OK, Anita.
I think this is extraordinary. It's not the timing that I think is bad. I think the strategy is bad, because fundamentally, you govern even within your parliamentary party in a coalition of sorts. You have different groups that you have to persuade to back you on any given issue. We are a parliamentary democracy, and we saw that with the Welfare Rebellion. And to take what has been an absolutely bruising and, in my view, disastrous first year, but certainly last couple of months, and to decide to go for more retribution rather than reflection about what you could do differently to effectively charm and ingratiate yourself with Labour MPs, I think is an odd move, because I really can't think of a moment where this has happened before. Obviously, you've mentioned Boris Johnson, but that was over a really central government platform. That was a kind of coming into what was going to be an election that was eventually going to present to the country a choice about Brexit, one singular issue. This feels like it's too difficult to manage, you guys. I think you might be fleeing to the Zara Sultana fruit and nut, whatever you call it, party. So let's preemptively strike. But I do worry genuinely about the signal it sends to Labour MPs, because you'll get ones, hopefully loyal ones like Will, that will say, well, actually, we don't want rebels, we want people to be loyal and helpful. But if you get that message that if you rebel or if you have an opinion and you're not going to be listened to and you're going to be treated like this, rebellion is catching. And I can speak with the scar still on my back. Party management is not easy, and so far I'm not sure this strategically was the right call.
I wonder if Keir is actually managing and governing his party in that way. And Tim can tell me if this is true, but I was told kind of anecdotally that back in 2010, David Cameron used to hold a lunch every Sunday for all of the Tory MPs that might potentially be causing trouble in the following week.
I was never invited.
You were never invited. Good to know.
Never a troublemaker, Tim.
I think I was.
Whereas there are still Labour MPs that have told me they're yet to meet Keir Starmer. And we're a year in.
How many times have you spoken to Keir Starmer over the last year, Will?
About 5 or 6. I don't think I'm a troublemaker, though, if I'm being honest.
No, but the thing is, I understand there are 5 Labour MPs who've never met Keir Starmer, have never spoken to him. And that is a really bad sign of party management on behalf of Number 10, because clearly everyone else has, so they must feel rather sort of shunned. And previous prime ministers would have, and I'm sure, Tim, you were invited to these when you were a backbencher, that well, actually, you were never a backbencher under a Tory government, were you? But the party leader would always invite a group of 20 or 30 MPs into Downing Street for an evening drinks, and then the next 20 the next night, and so forth. So there would always be some sort of connection, and that builds loyalty, and he doesn't seem to have done that.
He has been engaging, and obviously we don't do drinks, we do lunches where we pop in and have a chat. He's been doing groups of 12. I went to one just after he spoke to President Trump. I think he is working his way through it. Obviously, there's been a lot going on in the world. He's been travelling around a lot. Just to one of the points on cohesion, I do think there has been a lot of listening from my point of view. PLP seem to have actually changed, and there seems a lot more engagement from the top, so I am hopeful lessons have been learned.
But when this has happened in the past, Harold Wilson withdrew the whip from some Labour MPs who voted against a motion on Vietnam in 1968. I think in 1971, when they were in opposition on the European Communities Bill, he did the same. But I've struggled to find any examples of where the whip has been withdrawn from MPs for voting against something that wasn't a confidence motion. And these votes weren't confidence motions. That's where the difference is.
I think it's more of a collective build-up of actions of individuals over the past year as opposed to just this one vote. This is probably the cherry on the top, in my opinion. You can have a look at some of the other things that they've been overly vocal about and spoke about. It's not just this one singular issue.
But I don't know if you were listening to Rachel Maskell when you were waiting to come into the studio, but I mean, she's somebody who is not instinctively, I think, a serial rebeller. She's somebody who genuinely believes what she's saying and what she's doing is the right thing for her constituents. And it seems to, I'm sure many of our listeners, it seems really odd that somebody, a very principled woman, is being punished for doing her job.
And Anita and I were talking about that before we came in and saying...
You just rescued him, by the way, Jess.
Sorry, Will, but Rachel
back to you, Will, don't worry.
is Labour to her core.
Yeah,
you know,
34 years.
She's everything I think that represents the Labour Party, but maybe not Keir Starmer's.
I mean, I don't know the
Party.
other three. They may be brilliant MPs for all I know, but I mean, certainly one of them, Brian Leishman, he has rebelled 12 times, which is quite something in the first year as an MP, and the other three are all new MPs. But maybe they've got exactly the same motives as Rachel. I don't know, but you have to feel some sympathy, certainly for her, don't you?
Yeah, like I say, I hope we manage to come to a point where they can all get the whip back. I hope we bring them back into the fold. The Labour Party is a very broad church. There's a lot of different people that would have different Labour values. I think Rachel's sound, but ultimately it's a decision for the whips, and if they've continuously crossed the line, there has to be some sort of like punishment. Like you said, if people don't believe there's going to be any repercussions from disobeying the whip, what's the point in having the whip?
But it's one thing. It was always the norm that if you voted against a clear manifesto commitment, or if you voted against the finance bill, the budget, which is a clear big thing of the government, then that had the potential for you to lose the whip. What's happened in the welfare debate recently were not manifesto commitments. These are things that the Labour Party have suddenly realised they're going to need to do. So I have a lot of time for Rachel. I've served on various committees with her in the past. I certainly don't share her politics, but she believes in her politics. She's not trying to be a troublemaker. She's trying to stand up for what she believes in the best interest of her interest and her interpretation of what Labour Party policy was all about. And when she was challenged as to whether she's going to go across to the Corbyn party, she said, "No, I'm Labour through and through to the core." So you are alienating true socialists within the Labour Party. They're probably for the right reasons. Can you just
define what a socialist is? Because like I say, it's such a broad church. I was not happy with the original bill. Just being perfectly honest, I went through the correct chains. I didn't come on TV. I didn't scream. I didn't shout about it. I spoke to the whips. I wrote to ministers. I had meetings. We got concessions put forward, which I think were fairly reasonable. We got Clause 5 removed from the bill. She went out and put another amendment forward and got people to vote against it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to draw your period of purgatory to an end. Well, I'd like to, but actually I've just seen what the next question is, so it's going to be an interesting one, the next one. We'll come to that in a second. It's 22 minutes past 8.
The all-new LBC app. News your way. Download it for free from the App Store. This is LBC.
uk/YouGov.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
I know you
24 minutes past 8 on LBC. Liberal Democrat MP Jess Brown-Fuller is here. Labour MP Will Stone, Tim Loughton, former Conservative Minister, and Anita Boateng from Portland Communications. Andrew in Fulham says, with today's inflation figures coming in higher than expected, GDP still unexpectedly contracting, and a doom spiral of further taxes on the cards, which will likely further damage confidence, should Rachel Reeves now admit that her business taxes were a mistake and urgently rethink them to get the economy growing again? After all, Sir Keir Starmer recently said it is good when a government admits its mistakes. Well, June's inflation figure was revealed this morning to have been 3.6% when it was forecast to be 3.4%. Increases in fuel and food prices were blamed for this rise. Jess, should Rachel Reeves admit that she was wrong?
Absolutely. And when I am talking to businesses in my constituency of Chichester, they are saying that actually they were in a position where they were ready to grow. They wanted to go to the next step. They maybe wanted to invest in a larger premises or take on more staff. But with the national insurance hikes, they can't do that now. Meeting with small independent businesses, they're saying they used to take on apprentices. This year, they're not taking on apprentices because they can't afford to invest in the next stream of employees coming through. It's been really, really damaging to businesses, small and large, all across the country.
And Anita, what are your clients telling you?
I mean, this has been almost a disaster, really. And I think the thing is, I would be sort of thinking that the economy might move in a more positive direction were this the end of it. But all that we know about the choices that Rachel Reeves faces when it comes to the budget is that, in all likelihood, taxes are going up further. And it could also be businesses that are hugely targeted by that. And when you say growth is your biggest priority, but ultimately you're not willing to make any of the decisions that would really drive growth, neither are you able to cut spending, see the Welfare Rebellion talking about shaving off just $5 billion, and your fiscal rules are very loose anyway, so how on earth could you loosen them any further? You know, for listeners, the fiscal rules effectively say, promise that in 5 years spending will go down, which is not very tight, and at the moment we're spending over £100 billion on borrowing. There are no options beyond taxation, and if we continue in this doom spiral, then business confidence is only going to get worse, and the economy is only going to get worse. And when we see that we're at highest inflation, the second highest inflation in the G7, when we look at unemployment now, which is at 4.5%, which is the highest since 2021, I feel really pessimistic about the chances of the economy recovering in any way. And I think that business is only going to be clobbered again alongside the public in the autumn.
Tim Loughton.
I agree with Anita. I listened to Prime Minister's Question Time this morning, and Keir Starmer was coming out with this litany of these economic achievements. It said it created X 100,000 jobs. Okay, how many have we lost? It wasn't the net figure that we...
He did say business confidence was at a 9-year high.
Yes, I don't know what businesses he's talking to, because...
Well, there must have been some survey that he's quoting to.
Well, it's a very limited survey. And my experience, I mean, my constituency is just along the old constituency, just along the coast from Jess's. So we've got a lot of hospitality industries, for example, who are being absolutely crucified by the national insurance rise. That's why we're losing, and the threat of losing lots of restaurants and pubs closing down at a rate is really worrying. But the inflation figure today is worrying on various fronts, because if that carries on, then it's going to impact on interest rates. And the Bank of England is not going to be able to carry through the interest rates, which a lot of people are desperately relying on to keep mortgage rates lower. That's going to feed through to consumer confidence as well. But she is in such a straitjacket, and she absolutely desperately needs growth. And the national insurance clobbering businesses has been the biggest dampener on growth. And then we are losing a millionaire every 45 minutes. We've lost more billionaires than even Russia and China. Okay, I don't hold a torch for them, but it's a sign of confidence in this country. And bringing in these inheritance tax rules, that's what's really driving people out of the country, and that's driving investment and wealth out of the country to other competitors. These are not things that are going to create the growth that our economy desperately needs. Is the only way we're going to be able to avoid these tax rises and more inflation and more unemployment. The record of the last Conservative government, when you look at it more closely, we created 1,000 jobs a day. for the time we were in. We left inflation at 2%, which is the Bank of England.
You didn't. Business did. You created the conditions.
Absolutely right.
And that's why Keir Starmer, I thought, at Prime Minister's questions, I was disappointed that Kemi Bain didn't pick him up on this, because he said, we've created 340,000 jobs. I thought, no, mate, you haven't.
Ian, you are completely right, because government does not have its own money, it's public money, and government doesn't create jobs. It creates, hopefully, the conditions for people who take risks and invest, and entrepreneurs, business, to create those jobs. And they've been completely disincentivised by what we've had in just 12 months of this government. If they can do that in 12 months, then God knows what the economy is going to be like in 5 years.
So, Will, should Rachel Reeves now admit that her business taxes were a mistake and rethink them to get the economy growing again? That's a question from Andrew.
No, I think we've got to continue down the path and stabilise the ship, ultimately. If you keep chopping and changing, it's not going to be good. And I would disagree when people are saying that business hasn't been growing. We've seen record investment. Take my constituency for this. We're on the brink of bringing in drone factories. This defence spending is going to improve things. I appreciate it has been hard, and I appreciate the national insurance contributions are a challenging thing for business, but it is getting better. We are seeing more investment in green technologies because of some of the things that are happening across the pond. We're seeing more investment in defence. There are things that are changing, but it takes time.
The growth has contracted for the last 2 months.
Yeah, but there's been external factors on that, hasn't there? You know, some of the tariffs haven't been exactly helpful for us. You can see on the same front, we've had Keir Starmer getting 3 trade deals that could never be agreed before. This is going to have impacts on growth, but it takes time to come through.
I mean, there is a point there, isn't there, Tim, that sort of any government, I mean, people want it and they want it now. That's the society that we live in. They've only been in power for a year. Do you not have to give them a bit of slack?
Sure, look, I'm the last one who will start blaming a new government on day one. It's all gone pear-shaped. And, you know, we had the whole narrative about the 22 billion black hole, which nobody ever quite worked out where that came from. But what's happened in a very short space of time is a Labour government created economic crisis. It absolutely relates back to that budget that happened last autumn. The national insurance...
What I could talk about from my end of crisis in Swindon, right? What I'm doing is bringing jobs to Swindon through advanced manufacturing. What happened under the Conservatives? We saw Honda close after Brexit. Bodged Brexit deals have destroyed my town, and we are bringing manufacturing back.
That was not because of Brexit, as I remember.
Please don't blame everything on Brexit.
I think it was
Honda said that I'm trying to remember back, but they came out with lots of reasons, none of which were Brexit.
No.
I think it was linked to Brexit.
But I guess the fundamental thing, as you say, is that obviously the economy right now is in a very, very difficult place. But what you don't want to do is make it worse. And the situation, the speculation at the moment about wealth taxes, for instance, are going to see months of a cooling effect on people and businesses and those with wealth that we ultimately need to be able to fund our public services. So I'm not saying that the Labour government had a helpful inheritance, and I think that the economy is incredibly difficult right now, but these choices are actively making it worse, and the unwillingness or inability to take a grip of public finances is going to result in taxes needing to go up to fill that hole, and then you're in the cycle again. So obviously these things take time. You're totally right, Ian, but they're not going to recover unless you make the difficult choices now. And what we've seen in the U-turns, I mean, Will, you just talked about chopping and changing. I think we've seen quite a lot of chopping and changing when it comes to policy.
Not with the Chancellor, though. There is a big difference there.
Of course there has been. There has been chopping and changing because there was the winter fuel allowance.
They're saying about the budget and stuff like that and changing that is massively different. If you're going to revert away from the fiscal rules...
Well, I've just typed into ChatGPT what reasons did Honda give for closing their Swindon plant. We'll tell you in just a couple of minutes' time. 8:33 on LBC. News headlines with Daryl Jackson.
Sir Keir Starmer's punishing MPs who voted against his welfare reforms earlier this month by booting them out of the party. 4 backbenchers have been suspended by the Prime Minister. Speaking to LBC, one of those MPs, Brian Leishman, says he's devastated. A review of the government's counter-terror programmes called for it to widen its remit to include people obsessed with violence. Lord Anderson has been asked to look at what lessons could be learned from the murders of Sir David Amos and the Southport stabbings. Southend Airport's partially reopened after 4 people died when a small plane crashed on Sunday. A small number of flights are landing there this evening. LBC weather, light rain across Wales and the southwest of England this evening. A few showers for Northern Ireland and a low of 9 degrees.
This is LBC.
These apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Here we go. Jess Brown-Fuller is here, Liberal Democrat Health Spokesperson, MP for Chichester, Will Stone, Labour MP for Swindon North, Tim Loughton, former Conservative MP, and he's seeking the party's nomination for next year's Sussex mayoral election, and political consultant Anita Boateng. Now, just on the Honda thing, I do have a quote here from the Honda's Europe Vice President, who told the BBC, "This is not a Brexit-related issue for us. These changes globally are something we have to respond to."
Brutal.
I'm still sticking to my opinion on it.
So you're going against the horse's mouth. Okay, I'm not going to rub it in any further, but I was right. Janice in Cirencester. Hello, Janice. Oh, no, it's a text question. Why was the NHS ever allowed to sub in unqualified so-called doctors and put people's safety in danger? Now, a review today has recommended that physician associates should be banned from seeing patients before they've been diagnosed by a doctor first, and that the role should be renamed to physician assistants. Instead, the government has already agreed that this name change will go ahead. I remember the last time we covered this on the programme, it got a huge number of calls. I must admit, I'd never heard of the expression before. And a lot of doctors phoned in saying how unhappy they were with this system. We're going to be covering it after 9, by the way, as a phone-in as well. So if you've got strong views on that, we'd love to hear from you then. Jess, let's start with you.
Sure.
Is this a big thing in your area?
So every ICB treats these integrated care board. So health is in effect devolved to different areas. So, for example, in my area, it's NHS Sussex, which is the integrated care board. Every care board uses PAs, physician associates, in a slightly different way, which doesn't help anybody, because in some places they might be actively diagnosing, in other places they are taking more of an assistant role. It is deeply worrying that people were harmed by being misdiagnosed by somebody who is not a general practitioner, not a GP. So that's why the review is really important today, and it needs to be implemented as quickly as possible. So I'm really glad that the government are agreeing to change the name of physician associates to physician assistants, but actually making it clear to every ICB what the role of these PAs should be in GP practices is also a big part of it, because it's unclear, and you do end up with this postcode lottery across the country where you might be treated by a PA thinking that they are a fully qualified general practitioner when they are in fact not.
What's the difference between a physician associate or assistant and a nurse?
It's a good question, and I don't know what the difference is. In terms of their qualification.
No, only once per programme. Will?
No, I do not know. Obviously, it's not an ideal situation, and I'm glad that we're going to do the Gillian Leng review and implement the findings from that. It's not been great, and we've got to put people at the heart of this decision.
Are we not in danger, though? And I really don't want to sound insensitive here, but often we find a tragic case, and obviously there are several that have been mentioned here, but we lose sight of the fact that more generally, physician associates have done a really good job, but in one or two tragic cases, there's been a very, very bad outcome. Should we be changing not just the names, but the way that they operate just because of these one or two tragic cases?
I think we have to have a review on the matter and then make informed decisions off the back of that, because there seems to be an issue, and if we just ignore it, it's never going to get better. The report could come back saying we have to make changes here, here and here, not across the whole board, but we have to see what the findings of that are first.
Tim?
I think this is worrying, and I hadn't heard of physician associates before a few months ago when it raised its head before, and I don't know the difference with a nurse. Look, we need as many people in the health service as possible, but we need full transparency as to what everybody's capabilities and training allow them to do. And clearly, if we're all in the dark about the extent of the capabilities of physician associates, then the public won't be either. And there may be some cases, as happened here, where frankly they've gone beyond their remit. We have, for example, practice nurses working in GP surgeries doing a really good job and doing a lot of triaging to try and take some of the pressure off the GPs. But if somebody absolutely then needs to be in front of the GP, the practice nurse knows to refer them on. But everybody knows it's a practice nurse. They're not calling themselves doctors. So people must absolutely have full transparency about the capabilities and the extent of the skills of the person who's diagnosing the problem that they've got. And so if there's one good thing that's come out of this, then perhaps we're going to have an education of the public and greater transparency within health professionals. And remember, it's only recently that nurses have not been a protected title. So there were all sorts of people able to set themselves up as supposed clinicians without necessarily having the level of skills and qualifications that we would expect them to have. So I think this needs to be looked at closely so everybody can go in fully knowing exactly the level of treatment that they're getting and it's appropriate.
And
Anita. Sorry, Jess.
No, apologies. I was going to say Tim's absolutely right when he acknowledges that when you think of a GP practice, so often people think of the doctor within that, but actually additional roles within GP practices are what makes them work so effectively. The pharmacists that are working out of them, the nurses, you need all of those roles. And so these PAs do play a really important role in that, but it's got to be rooted in the fact that people know who they're seeing and they don't think they're seeing a qualified doctor when they have those conversations with them.
Anita.
Yeah, I mean, I have some sympathy with your view in that sometimes, like, hard cases and bad cases make for bad laws, but I think that this is not just about a thing that went wrong. It's actually about a kind of fundamental problem within the system where people don't know what physician associates or assistants actually do. And I think that having clarity and consistency across the board would be incredibly helpful. I do incidentally think that across our healthcare system, like, we could make greater use of pharmacists, for instance, who have a lot of expertise in things that often people go to the GP about. They could go to the pharmacist, and there are European cultures where that's much more done, and I think that's a good way of managing demand. But I think that people being effectively in the dark about who they're seeing is just incredibly unhelpful for trust in the system as a whole. So that is something that we do specifically need to tackle. I'm not convinced that the name change is sufficient for that, because ultimately, I personally, maybe this is just me and Jess, to you see people who feel differently, but calling someone an assistant versus an associate, I wouldn't particularly understand the level of qualification required as a lay person. And therefore, I would say that it needs more than that. And it needs some standardisation across the...
You see, if they're called assistants, then to me, that's somebody in a very junior role who doesn't necessarily have any training. They're just there to sort of hand things to people. And that's not what physician associates are, is it?
It's a combination that I think is confusing to people. Because it might just be... I feel like the name change isn't enough.
Well, as I say, we're going to be talking much more about this after 9 o'clock. If you are a physician associate, soon to be assistant, we'd love to hear from you, because you can tell sort of on the panel we're all sort of struggling with what physician associates actually do. So it would be good to hear from the horse's mouth. Neil says, "Good evening, Iain. Enjoying your guest debate. Can you please tell me who the female guest is with the absolutely memorisingly beautiful voice? I could listen to that lady all day. A female equivalent of your great voice." Well, that's... Now, you see, I can't judge which of our female guests he's referring to here. It could be Jess Brown-Fuller, Liberal Democrat MP for Chichester, or it could be Anita Boateng from Portland Communications.
The only way we're going to know Anita is a sing-off.
I mean, I'm ready to fight to the death.
Oh dear. Right, we are going to come to another subject, a very important one, in just a moment. No, apparently I've got a nicer voice than either of you two, apparently. So it's 8:45.
This is LBC.
18 or over.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Jess Brown-Fuller, Will Stone, Tim Loughton and Anita Boateng with us answering your questions. I was just telling them that tomorrow at 8 o'clock we have Fuse ODG in the studio with me. You may remember he was on Cross Question probably about 6 months ago. He teamed up with Ed Sheeran to denounce the remaking of the Live Aid single, but was basically saying that African countries want to exist on their own feet and we don't need this sort of thing anymore, and it's very colonial. And he was a brilliant guest on Cross Question, where he's got a new album out, and he's had some interesting things to say also on the subject of the 40th anniversary of Live Aid. So he's coming in tomorrow to take your calls from 8 o'clock on LBC. Now, Rob in Kingston has a text question. He says, is it right to cut the number of foreign students coming here? Now, the London Mayor said, Sir, I still can never say this, Sir Sadiq Khan has today responded to proposals being considered by ministers to charge a new levy on the income which England's universities make from overseas students as an act of intense economic self-harm. In the academic year before the one which has just ended, there were almost 750,000 overseas students doing courses at higher education institutions across the country, making up almost a quarter of the entire student population. Anita?
I think that ultimately the number of foreign students here are actually a really important source of growth for our economy, and it's become a really difficult policy area because ultimately the government doesn't really want to fund additional places, and also you're in a situation where the amount that we want to charge students cannot go up, so we're in this weird impasse. But ultimately our universities are some of the best in the world, and if we don't fund them properly, we're just not going to continue to dominate. And actually it has a ripple effect, not just on who comes and understands and knows British culture and supports it and then potentially goes back home, but also the talent we're able to farm into the UK. So I think I see university places as an investment in the strength of the future of our economy, and I think we're thinking too short-sightedly about how we fund that into the future.
Tim?
Our university is amongst the best in the world, and its education is a great British export and a major part of the economy, and it's absolutely right and beneficial that we attract foreign students to come here to learn, and where appropriate to then stay and set up their own businesses and bring their expertise and entrepreneurialism to the benefit of the UK economy. Where I have a problem is where certain universities are relying disproportionately on foreign students to balance their finances, and in particular relying too much on certain countries, particularly China. And China has sent more students than any other country outside the EU to British universities. And in some cases, there are British universities relying for 28-30% of its income from Chinese students. And there are signs that it is influencing their policies, and they are having serious interventions on some research projects.
We should tell our listeners you're actually banned from China.
I'm biased because I'm sanctioned by China, and one of the reasons I'm sanctioned by China is by speaking the truth about some of the human rights abuses and the way that the Chinese Communist Party government has inveigled itself in so many institutions in the West, and university campuses are one of them. Absolutely, we can have them here, but they should not be investing in sensitive defence to telecommunication infrastructure projects, as they have been in too many universities, who have then been clamping down on criticism of China because they don't want to annoy China as well. So we've got to get the balance right. There's one thing that we did do, which we should have done before, is it's great to have foreign students coming here to study. They don't all need to bring their families with them. So that was a large part of the immigration figures, and one reason why the immigration figures are going down is because now we've got students coming here without feeling the need to bring their families with them. One of my daughters spent a year studying in South America because she was studying languages, so she had half a year at Sao Paulo University and half a year in Buenos Aires. She didn't feel the need to take me or my wife or the rest of the family with her. So let's do it for the right reasons, and then let's make it easier, I think, for those people who really want to stay and contribute and invest in our economy and set up businesses and create employment and wealth, encourage them to be able to do that as well.
Will?
I find myself agreeing with Tim on a lot of his points. The devil in all of this is in the detail. I don't know how much they're going to be looking to charge, but I think we've got to sort out the funding models for universities so they're not relying on foreign students to come in. But I welcome foreign students coming over and studying. It's a testament to how fantastic our universities are, but I would have to look at the detail and see what the proposed charges are. Is that money going to be going in to fund more provisions for the university? How do we balance the books on it? But we've got to get the investment right on it.
I mean, just on the point that you made, Tim, about bringing their families with them, but that is a reason why the number of foreign students has declined in the past couple of years, because Australia, Canada, America don't have those restrictions, as I understand it.
But by the same token, were people using the student route in order to be able to bring families here as well, and there was some abuse of the of the system. If people are coming, there are special considerations applied to PhD students and those who are here for longer term, more substantial projects. Absolutely right, and certainly if they've got dependents, if they're older students as well, then there are provisions for them. But for the normal undergraduate student coming here, you don't need to come here with the rest of your family.
Jess.
International students play a really important role in our universities and in the funding model of our universities as well. And I know I've had multiple conversations with my university in Chichester about how they attract international students to the university and the courses that they are offering. There is a simple solution, which is a return to the Erasmus scheme, or properly funding the Erasmus scheme, because then you take the same amount of international students as those that then go to foreign countries to study. So it's an equal opportunity.
Are you going to follow Will's lead and bring Brexit into this conversation?
I'd hate to do an hour-long panel and not bring Brexit into the conversation.
We've got the touring programme because of Brexit, which is fantastic, because it applies to the whole of the world, not just the EU.
And on that bombshell, let's go to Scott in West Hampstead. Hello, Scott.
Hi, Ian. Good evening, panel. The government is exploring new proposals for a digital ID card to crack down upon illegal migration, rogue landlords, and illegal work practices. Do panel members agree that digital ID cards are now needed to help protect Britain's economic and security interests?
Well,
I think it is going to be helpful, to be honest with you. We're going into a digital age. I can't see why looking at digital ID cards isn't a good thing. I've heard some of the conspiracy theories around it, about control and stuff of that nature, but it'd be easier for me to have a digital ID card on my phone as opposed to carrying around my passport, just being realistic. So I think it is a good idea.
Jess?
Not quite sure what my party policy is on that, so I will answer.
What's yours?
I will answer as an individual. I'll take the opportunity to tell you what Jess's opinion is.
Strong view on this.
Well, I think actually, because we have been having lots of conversations recently about it, and we've been having round tables and bringing ourselves together, and quite honestly, I think we're quite split in the party as to whether we think that is a good thing.
2 or 3 ways.
Ooh,
5.
I think two. But for me personally,
as a Liberal, surely you would have to be against them.
As a Liberal Democrat, I would suggest that we are now in a digital age, as Will said, and anything that makes it, for example, easier for people to vote, because now they have to provide ID at polling stations. And I know when I was out knocking on doors, there were plenty of people that said, I can't go and vote because I don't have an ID card. So anything that makes it easier for people to access democracy, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. But I think there's more work to do to understand, if there was going to be an introduction of digital IDs, what that would actually mean.
Tim?
Well, I've always been against having bog standard ID cards, and when we've had them in the past, they were in order, wartime and afterwards, in order to enable rationing and things like that. If you have an ID scheme, there has got to be a benefit from it, not just in order to prove who you are. So you have a driving licence because the benefit is you can drive. You have a passport because it enables you to be able to travel abroad. Frankly, we've all got digital IDs. We've all got these phones which got so much of our information, and it's now automatically logged. The proposal here, I understand, is for digital ID for migrants in order to claim various entitlements and to prove that they're here legally. And I don't have a problem with that. It's one of the major complaints of the French. And when I was on the Home Affairs Select Committee, when we were looking at the whole small boat crisis, which, surprise, is even more of a crisis now than it was, one of the complaints of the French was is that we don't have ID cards and we don't clamp down on the black economy too much, even though we have some pretty rigorous penalties for doing it. So I think in order to entitle those people who should be here to be able to legitimately be here, to expect them to have a digital ID card, I think is fine. I wouldn't extend it to the whole of the population, but technology is moving so fast that frankly we are sort of by the back door becoming digitally ID'd anyway, and I think it will become a norm in a few more years.
But I suppose on the data point, because we haven't talked about the Afghan data leak, if we were going to introduce ID cards...
that's surprising, no questions on that.
What would that mean in terms of the holding of our data and where that could then potentially go? Because we've seen what happens when a leak happens with data.
Yeah.
The government have that data already.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. I've changed my view on this, really, from being someone who was very sceptical about the need for the state to have that kind of level of control. But I do think we are moving in a different direction when it comes to technology. And we effectively do have digital ID. And one of the big draws, we know this, when it comes to small boats or irregular migration, is the grey economy that is very prominent in the UK. And I do think some standardisation, not just for migrants, actually across the piece, would allow us to really properly grip this issue. And I do think data is a concern, but we willingly give our data over to Apple and all sorts of companies all the time. And the idea that the state should be the line where we draw it, where I think, data breaches do happen, unfortunately, but we're able to hold government accountable for that data in a way that we aren't with private companies. We ought to really think about the cost-benefit analysis, and in my view, it's shifted slightly.
OK. Right, our fun question from Matt in Edinburgh. UNESCO has added 26 amazing places from around the world to its list of World Heritage Sites. Where do you think deserves to be recognised on a list like that, but isn't yet? Jess?
Chichester Harbour.
I just knew
Did you
it was
know
going to
I
be
was going
something
to
in
go
Chichester.
for a water-based place?
No, I just knew it'd be in Chichester.
Chichester Harbour is honestly quite stunning, and it's actually the largest European recreational boating harbour, and should be recognised.
How many other recreational boating harbours are there?
It's the largest. That's what we should focus on.
Always size it counts,
it's the largest and the most beautiful.
Well,
Universal Studios Florida, greatest holiday destination ever.
That's not in
I thought
Swindon.
I thought you'd have thought the Honda factory in Swindon.
Also,
You're on the Honda factory. You can't preserve that, can you?
Anita.
I can't think of anything worse, honestly, than going to a theme park. Honestly.
No, I mean,
absolutely,
I totally agree with you.
Absolutely not. I'm going to pick somewhere in Ghana because I have to. Lake Busanchu, which is like this lake that was formed by a meteor going into the ground, and it's kind of this beautiful, natural, kind of spiritual place that people should go to. So there we go.
I'm sure Fuse ODG would agree with you. He really would. Tim?
If I'd suggested somewhere in America when I was in power, I'd been completely crucified. That's outrageous.
We don't know what's
It's
going
a
to happen.
new era, Tim.
Where are you going for in Worthing?
I'm not. I'm thinking bigger than you, because obviously they've missed it out, but the UNESCO site should be the whole of Sussex, because it is the most amazing county in the whole of England. Which is why I will be honoured to become its next first mayor.
So glad that Matt asked that question. Well, thank you all very much indeed, apart from the last answer. Monday's panel includes the Public Sector Union Unison's General Secretary, Christina McAnee, the Conservative Shadow Treasury Minister, Mark Garnier, and LBC's very own Ali Mirage. So that's on Monday from 8. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to return to the subject of physician associates. A new report says they should not diagnose patients. If you are a physician associate, do give us a call and tell me what you think of that. The review has examined 6 patient deaths that coroner's reports had directly linked to physician associates. Do you think that reports should be done on that basis, that just reacting to 6 very tragic events should govern future policy? I have to say I'm sceptical about that, but I'm quite willing to accept that I know absolutely nothing about it, but I will do by 10 o'clock with your help. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From From Global's newsroom, 4 Labour MPs have been suspended from the party by the Prime Minister. They all voted against the government's planned welfare reforms, and the move's being seen as Sir Keir Starmer trying to reassert his authority. Neil Duncan-Jordan, Brian Leishman and Chris Hinchcliffe have all lost the party whip. The fourth, Rachel Maskell, who was one of the most outspoken against the changes, told LBC it's been very upsetting.
A really sad day because I've been a Labour Party member for 34 years. I remain a Labour Party member, but the whip has been taken from me today because I chose to speak truth to power about the circumstances of my constituents, disabled constituents.
Well, Will Stone, the Labour MP for Swindon North, told LBC